You can scoot to the side as much as it'll allow.
Just in case
Like down to that.
take a picture of you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it's no. V. Take, so as long as this will.
I would ask you all to take a look at your electronics as well and make sure they're set to stun. We certainly don't want to interrupt what's going on here. It's going to be a great morning, and let's not let our digital devices do that. With that, Chaplain.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Happy holidays to all of you. Last year, we started a ceremony called the Season of Light. It was the first time that we tried to bring our communities together. This is a tremendously important season for people of faith in our nation. We tried to do a very simple, at that time, so I had a rabbi named Rabbi Mindale Sorota came, and we became friends. This morning is special for the Colorado Army National Guard because we just did the federal recognition for the first ever Colorado Army National Guard rabbi to join our chaplain team. You're Michael Gorelik. He's a professor at Colorado State University. He's a wonderful man, has a great sense of humor, has a thick Australian accent. And the thing I love about him, he has a deep heart just to love soldiers and their families and to serve them as a shepherd. That's what I'm looking for as we build this chaplain team. I said this rank stuff opens doors with commanders and helps us feed our family, but what you put over your name tape, your religious, that's what we're looking for, shepherds that have a heart to go and whether it's picking up brass at the shooting range or being with people when their kids are in the hospital, that's what we're about. So we're so delighted that you're here today to hear from our honored guest, and Colonel Kick, thanks for helping moderate that. We're just delighted to have you. And so I'll turn it over to Colonel Kick to introduce our special guest today.
Great. Thank you, Chaplain. General Paul, leaders, soldiers, civilians, team members, it's going to be a great morning. We are truly blessed today to have Mr. Jack Adler with us. I thought we would come in and quite frankly be affected, but I have spent the last half hour with Mr. Adler and it's pretty much nonstop jokes. So there's going to be, yes, absolutely. I told him I need a notepad to write down the jokes he's throwing. And that's, I think, part of Mr. Adler's message. There's going to be a whole lot that he'll teach us this morning that I hope each and every one of you walks away with and has changed you a little bit. Interesting times in our world, some important things for the Colorado National Guard, our historic lineage to the liberation of Dachau. That's coming up in May of next year, the 75th anniversary. So a whole lot of important reasons. And the most important, I think all of you are aware of Mr. Adler's history, his own liberation from Dachau, the subsequent calling in his life to go out and spread the important message to remember and to come together as a people and share respect as a people. So again, we're going to learn a lot this morning. Thank you all for being here. And with that, sir, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I speak to you as an eyewitness to one of the darkest pages in human history of man's inhumanity to man. I speak to you as a child survivor of the Holocaust, who spent age 10 to 16 in the Holocaust. The climate for the evil we call the Holocaust began to develop many centuries before Adolf Hitler and the Nazis came to power. The Jewish people have been subjected to anti-Semitism now for over 2,000 years. An anti-Semitism that was created based on lies against them, and those lies have been passed down from generation to generation up to this very day. As a result of those lies, the Jewish people have been bullied, yes, bullied. The most dangerous bullies are those who have a following, because the followers don't question right from wrong. They blindly follow and accept what they are being told as being factual. In 1492, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain ordered the people of the Jewish faith to convert to Christianity or be expelled. We know it as the Spanish Inquisition. In 1521, after being excommunicated by the Catholic Church, Martin Luther, the founder of the Lutheran Church, was very nice to the Jewish people. But as he built a following and asked the Jewish people to join him, and the Jewish people refused to do so, Martin Luther, the founder of the Lutheran Church, wrote the most hateful things about the people of the Jewish faith. His writings demonized, dehumanized, and stereotyped the Jewish people. As a matter of fact, Adolf Hitler, prior to gaining power, was briefly imprisoned at the Landsberger prison in Germany, where he wrote his book, Mein Kampf. In it, his expression of hatred towards the Jewish people was based on those hateful writings. I was born in Poland, in the city of Pabianice, Poland. The population, my hometown, numbered around 42, 43,000. The Jewish population, almost 9,000. My immediate family numbered 6. My parents, 2 sisters, brother and I. Adding to it my extended family in my hometown when the Nazis occupied it, the first week of September 1939, we numbered 83. As a 10-year-old boy, I watched with excitement as the occupation took place, because I noticed some of the local population embracing the Nazi soldiers, handing them flowers, food, drinks. Not in my wildest imagination could I have imagined what was in store for the people of my faith. I didn't have to wait too long. Within hours after the occupation took place, notices were posted throughout the city directed towards the Jewish population, which stated in part that effective immediately, no Jewish person is allowed to step outdoors unless he or she wears 2 yellow stars of David attached to their clothing, one in the front, one in the back. Effective immediately, no Jewish child is allowed to attend any public schools, and all Jewish houses of worship must be shut down. I remember watching the destruction of the synagogue, where my family and I used to attend, to being destroyed primarily by the local population, being stripped completely of its interior and converted into a stable for horses. And the beatings and tortures began almost immediately. Nazi soldiers and officers would enter Jewish neighborhoods and select men and women and chase them to the town square with whips and dogs like animals. If anyone objected his or her treatment, they were shot on the spot. And those were daily occurrences. In February of 1940, we were moved into a ghetto in the city of Pabianice. The ghetto in the city of Pabianice was an open ghetto, meaning there was no barbed wire surrounding it. However, we had to obey a very strict curfew within the ghetto. We could only move within the ghetto during daylight hours, cross the main street twice daily, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. In the ghetto, the Nazis formed a Jewish committee whose primary functions were to provide the Nazis, upon request, laborers to work outside of the ghetto and to distribute the inhabitants of the ghetto the daily food ration, which on the average day consisted of a slice of bread and a bowl of soup. Within months after we moved into the ghetto, people were dying from malnutrition, disease. I lost my mother and brother in the ghetto of Pabianice. Around March of 1942, we were notified by the German authorities that our ghetto is going to be relocated, and that relocation will take place on May 16, 1942. And they divided the inhabitants of the ghetto into 2 groups, A and B. On May 16th, we were told to be in front of our dwellings at 2 p.m. sharp. 2 p.m. sharp, dozens of Nazi officers, soldiers arrived and marched us all to the soccer field. When we arrived to the soccer field, it was divided right down the middle. Group A were told to move to the left, Group B to the right. Only then did we realize why we were divided into those 2 groups. In Group A, you found those the Nazis viewed as useless eaters, the old, the sick, the young. My little sister was in Group A. In Group B, you found those the Nazis viewed as able-bodied men and women who could still perform some slave labor for them. Therefore, they can go on living a little bit longer. My father, older sister, and I were in Group B. It was a very rainy night. It was very dark in the soccer field. Most of the lighting came from the headlights of the trucks as they started moving out people from Group A. About a couple hours after they started this process, a couple Nazi officers came up towards Group B and asked for volunteers to pick up the debris that was left behind by those who were shipped out from Group A, like articles of clothing, pieces of paper. Hoping to see my little sister again, I volunteered. Each volunteer was given a baby carriage. In those days, they had those deep baby carriages. And I slowly moved from Group B towards Group A, bending down, picking up pieces of paper, articles of clothing, not to attract any attention. And when I got close enough towards Group A, and it was dark in the soccer field, most of the lighting came from the headlights of the trucks. And when it was dark in the soccer field, I started calling her name out. And some of the people who were still in Group A repeated calling her name. And to my surprise, she was still there. She came running towards me, and I motioned to her. And I told her not to get too close, wait until it's dark again, and try to get into the baby carriage. And she did so. And I slowly moved from Group A towards Group B, where my father and older sister were waiting to hear from me. Once again, bending down, picking up pieces of paper, articles of clothing, however, this time to cover her up. Because if the Nazis would have realized what we were up to, they would kill us on the spot. And when I got close enough towards Group B, I told my father and sister that she's in the baby carriage. And when it was dark in the soccer field, they took her out. The following day, we found out what happened to those who were in Group A, the old, the sick, the young. All of them perished in the extermination camp at Chełmno, Poland. Group B were moved to the ghetto of Lodz, L-O-D-Z. The ghetto of Lodz was a huge ghetto because they sent people from the smaller towns into the ghetto of Lodz. I would say in its peak, the population in the ghetto of Lodz exceeded 300,000 people. The ghetto of Lodz was surrounded by barbed wire every 10, 12 feet. There was an armed guard station to make sure that no one escapes. Occasionally, people tried to escape, but they were shot on the spot. In the ghetto of Lodz, the Nazis had all kinds of factories they established to assist them with the war machinery. I was assigned to work in a straw factory, where we were ordered to manufacture straw shoes to be worn by the German soldiers who were then fighting the Soviet Union on the Eastern Front to keep their feet warm. Once again, the average daily food ration in the ghetto of Lodz consisted of a slice of bread and a bowl of soup. The bowl of soup, however, was given us at work. So many people who were too weak, too sick to work, forced themselves to go to work in order to receive the second half of the daily food ration, the bowl of soup, so that they can go on a little bit longer. People were dying from malnutrition and disease in the ghetto of Lodz by the thousands. People were taken up to extermination camps by the thousands. When the ghetto of Lodz was being liquidated late summer 1944, there were less than 68,000 people left in the ghetto of Lodz. Once again, we were notified that the ghetto is being relocated. And however, this time, we were ordered to report to the railroad station, approximately 5,000 people per day. Once we arrived to the railroad station, we were herded into cattle cars, boxcars, packed like sardines into a can, standing room only. Once a car was filled to its maximum capacity and the doors were sealed from the outside, we traveled to an unknown destination for about 2 days. And when we finally arrived at that unknown destination and the doors to the boxcars were opened, we were greeted by Nazi officers and soldiers with whips and dogs shouting at us, "Disembark at once, line up, 5 across, men separate from women, and march forward." We were also met by some prisoners whose job was to take away whatever meager belongings one brought along with them. And they whispered to us, "If you want to live when you march, look strong. You just arrived at the Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination and selection camp. By the way, Auschwitz was the concentration camp. Birkenau was the extermination and selection camp. We were all in Birkenau. We marched forward for a selection process, which was being conducted by Dr. Joseph Mengele, also known as the Angel of Death. When you approached him and his henchmen, they looked you over. If in their eyes you looked strong enough to be able to perform some slave labor, you were ordered to move to their right. And once again, the old, the sick, the young, including my little sister, were ordered to move to the left. Those who were ordered to move to the left were told they'll be taking showers. And as they were ordered to remove their clothing, they were told to remember the hook number which you place your clothing on, so that when you come out of the shower, you'll be able to retrieve it. They were herded in a huge room. It looked like a shower room. It had shower heads throughout the ceiling. However, once the room was filled, the doors were sealed. Instead of water, Cyclone Z gas came out. And within minutes, they were all dead. And then the bodies were taken to the crematoriums where they were burned. My father and I remained in Auschwitz-Birkenau for approximately a week. Every day we had to go through a selection process where the Nazis would select prisoners to be sent to various concentration camps to perform slave labor for them. After about a week, my father and I were sent to the concentration camp at Calvary, Germany. Even though the Nazis knew they were losing the war, this was late summer 1944, they built 11 new concentration camps at Calvary, numbered 1 through 11. My father and I were assigned to work at a construction site where the Nazis were building underground hangars for airplanes. The two of us were assigned to carry bags of cement as the cement arrived by rail to the construction site, from the rail to the site, to the construction site, back and forth, 12 hours a day. If you didn't move fast enough to the likings of a guard, they would beat you. But one sadistic guard, what he did, he took like a broomstick, drove a nail through it. And if you didn't move fast enough to his liking, he would hit you with that pointed nail in the neck. I still have a scar on my neck today. And if I weren't with my father, I probably would have bled to death. What my father did, tore a piece of paper up from a bag of cement, applied his saliva and pressed it against the wound, and he stopped the bleeding. About 3 months after we arrived to Calvary, half of the population was no longer alive. As they reorganized the camps at Calvary, I was separated from my father and sent to the concentration camp at Dachau, Germany. The population in the Dachau, I would say 90% of all were non-Jewish. You could find every European nationality in Dachau, including many German people who were political prisoners, homosexuals, murderers, and so on. However, being that the construction site was under the jurisdiction of Dachau, I continued to work at the same site. And occasionally, as I marched to or from work, I would see my father, and all we could do is wave to each other. Each group of about 25 prisoners had a capo, K-A-P-O, assigned to them. A capo was like a foreman. It was his job to make sure whatever job was assigned to his group of prisoners is being performed properly. The head of all the guards and all the prisoners was an SS colonel. One day he called my capo and ordered him to send him a young prisoner. Being the youngest one in his group, he picked me for the job, which was much easier. All I had to do in his small office is sweep the floor, dust the furniture. It was getting cold by then, and he had a wood-burning stove. I had to make sure the fire keeps going. Daily, the first thing I would do is I come into the commanding officer's office, sit on the floor, empty out the ashes from the wood-burning stove. And almost on a daily basis within the ashes, I would find neatly wrapped in pieces of wax paper, pieces of bread, pieces of bacon. The colonel would throw in for me to find, or else he would have thrown it into the garbage, something that helped to survive. Around March of 1945, the Nazis allowed the International Red Cross to enter Dachau and to distribute food packages, like a care package, to the non-Jewish prisoners. However, they had some leftover, and they decided to distribute those to young prisoners. and I received one of those food packages. Mind you, this was March 1945. Even the German people had many food shortages. Sugar was one of them. And this package I received had a bag of sugar. I took all of its contents out from the package, put it across my belt line, so no one would take anything away from me. As we marched back to camp after I received the food package, one of the guards approached me and asked me, "Did you receive a food package today?" I said, "Yes, sir." "Do you still have the sugar?" I said, "Yes, sir." And when I told him I still had the sugar, he took a big slice of bread out of a duffel bag and showed it to me and said, "If you give me the bag of sugar every day, you get a slice of bread like this." Boy, I gladly turned the little bag of sugar over to him, because a slice of bread like the one he showed me daily can mean survival. So the following day, as we marched back to work, I made sure I'm on the outside where he was guarding us so he could see me, give me a slice of bread as promised. After marching for a while, I could see him come towards me. He passed me by. I looked at him and he looked at me, and in German he says to me, "Was Mr. Haben? What do you want?" Excuse me. I thought maybe he didn't recognize me. I told him, "I'm the one who gave you the bag of sugar. You promised me a slice of bread every day." And when I told him this, he took the rifle off his shoulder, but the rifle butt hit me in my ribcage. He said, "Here's your bread." I barely made it to the commanding officer's office. And as I indicated, the first thing I would do in his office, sit on the floor, empty out the ashes from the wood burning stove. After I completed doing it, I was in so much pain, I was unable to get up. And I started to cry. And the colonel, mind you, a higher-ranking Nazi officer, an SS colonel, came up to me, and this was the first time in over 5 years, especially, a Nazi higher-ranking officer would talk to me like to a human being. He came up to me and asked me, "Was ist los, meine Junge? What's wrong, my boy?" Even though I realized informing on a Nazi guard to his superior officer by a Jewish boy, the consequences may be very harsh. But I was in so much pain, I didn't care what happens to me, and I told him what happened. And the colonel in turn said to me, "Tonight when we fall in, before they would allow us to march back to camp after work, we had to fall in to be counted to make sure no one escaped or was missing." He ordered me to point the guard out to him. Reluctantly, I did so. So marching back to camp, I had the group, we marched 4 groups of 500 each, 5 across. I hid in one of the groups of 500 in the middle, hoping the guard wouldn't see me, nothing happened. The following day, same thing, going back to work, I'm in the middle of a group of 500 prisoners, hoping the guard wouldn't see me. And after marching for a while, we marched over an hour to and from work each way. I could see out of the corner of my eye, this guard was looking across each row of prisoners. I said to myself, here comes another beating where he could kill me. Nobody would do anything to him. And after he passed me by, he reached out and handed me a slice of bread. I couldn't believe my eyes. And when I came into the commanding officer's office, practically the moment I opened the door, he approached me and asked me, "Did the guard give you any bread today?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Every day he's to give you a slice of bread as he promised you. If he fails to do so even one day, don't be afraid. Just let me know." Even though he was a higher-ranking Nazi officer, he was a decent human being caught up in the Nazi movement, as were many other German people. And when he could do, knowing the war was coming to an end, he could do something humane, he didn't hesitate, and he saved my life. We remained in Dachau until about April 27, 1945, when almost 7,000 of us were marched out of Dachau. The march has been documented as the Death March. We marched all during daylight hours. At night, we would sleep in the woods. They would take a group to the other side of the woods. They were given shovels in order to dig a big ditch. When the ditch was completed, they were ordered to line up around the perimeter of the ditch, and they were shot to death. When we were liberated, first early in the morning, May 1, 1945, by the United States 3rd and 7th Army under the command of General Dwight David Eisenhower and George Patton, there were less than 4,000 of us left. I was 16. I was very weak and sick. I wouldn't have made it one more day. And those who couldn't continue the march were shot. They wouldn't leave him behind alive. I was immediately hospitalized in a newly formed displaced persons camp at Vierenwald, Germany. When I was checked into the hospital, I weighed a little over 65 pounds. I received excellent medical care for about 90 days. During my hospitalization, the International Red Cross and the UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Rehabilitation Administration, conducted surveys of survivors throughout Europe and compiled lists of those survivors. And those lists were posted in the various displaced persons camps. And that's when I found out I was the sole survivor of my immediate family of 6, and one of 5, including my extended family. I was brought as a war orphan to the United States by the Jewish Children's Bureau in 1946 and placed to live in a wonderful foster home in Chicago, Illinois. I first attended night school to learn the language. I finished high school, college. I proudly served in the United States Army during the Korean conflict. I got married. I have 2 wonderful children, a son and a daughter, 4 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. The Holocaust ended over 70 years ago. What has humanity learned from the evil we call the Holocaust? Well, let's take a trip around the world. In the former Yugoslavia and Kosovo, thousands of Muslims were slaughtered. Rwanda, Somalia, Zaire, millions have died and dying in the Middle East. We didn't learn much. You know, what anti-Semites don't tell you about the Jewish people, besides lies, you know, there's 7 billion of us on this planet we call Earth, over 7 billion. 2.3 billion plus are Christian. 22%, over 1.5 billion are Muslim. Any of you know how many Jewish people are represented in the 7 billion? 1/5 of 1%, a little over 4 billion. And what those anti-Semites don't tell you is that 1/5 of 1% are the recipients of over 20% of Nobel Prizes. And what they don't tell you is that some of them or their loved ones would be crippled today with polio if it weren't for Jewish Dr. Jonas Salk, who discovered the anti-polio vaccine and refused to patent it so that everyone on this planet has access to it, and saving millions of lives annually from this crippling disease. In the United States, we number over 320 million people, represented by every race, ethnicity, and religious group. It's a diversity we ought to be very proud of. It's a diversity that built and is continuing to build this great nation of ours. But we also have hate groups in this great nation of ours who are ready and willing to tear this great nation apart. Hate groups like the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nation, the Nation of Islam, and others. It's up to all of us. It's up to all of us to make sure we silence those voices of hatred. The 7 billion of us on this planet, all of us, belong to one race, the human race. And therefore, no group, no matter how the group identifies itself by religion, ethnicity, or color, has a monopoly on good or bad. Let's help each other, not hate each other. Living in this great nation, we don't have to like everyone, but we have to respect everyone to go on as a nation, as a civilization. Don't love me, don't like me if you don't want me. But remember, allow yourself to be guided by the golden rule. Do unto others as you like them to do unto you. I thank you very much. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer questions. And remember, there are no stupid questions, only stupid answers. And I'm grateful.
Sir, thank you so much. I have a question to lead off, and I guess how your experiences coming out of that terrible experience in the Holocaust. Your first face of freedom was a soldier. And it sounds like that was impactful to you because you mentioned you served yourself. Can you tell us about how that experience was and how these folks in here can kind of learn some lessons of that and how they serve every day?
Yeah, it was early in the morning, May 1, early, maybe around 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I could see the adults, I could hear the adults speak very loud that was a no-no. So I crawled over, barely made it, and I said, what's going on? And they said, they all gone. I said, who is gone? As the SS, the killers were gone. They left behind the Wehrmacht, which is the regular German army, to keep an eye on us. And a few minutes later, military vehicles, jeeps, tanks, trucks with military personnel, when they saw us, they stopped right in front of us. And one of the officers got on the hood of a jeep with a bullhorn like and announced, "This is the United States Army, you are all free." That's how we knew we were liberated. Yes, sir.
This past weekend, I saw a very moving piece about music that was written in the concentration camps. And I just wanted your perspective on how those types of things impacted your daily life there.
One thing, they were, the Nazis had many psychologists in the Nazi movement. They used a lot of psychology. In Auschwitz, actually, they had music. When we marched in from Auschwitz to Birkenau, they had a band of prisoners playing music. So they used it to their advantage to kill the nonsense one may have in his or her mind about it. By the way, this colonel told me you get $100 for every question you ask.
I have a question. Sir, we teach a lot to our soldiers about resiliency, how to keep going when life is very difficult, when people are wrestling with thoughts of suicide or depression or just adversity. What kept you going through all that ordeals that you had to go through?
That's an excellent question. People who gave up hope, very few survived. When I was with my father, he told me constantly, and when we were separated, he shouted at me. He said, "This will end very soon. If you want to see your loved ones again, be strong and go out." And that's what kept me going.
Hope.
You have watched communism and socialism and these things that are destructive to humanity over these several years. Where do you see where they're playing a role in today's society and how we've lost the history of what those?
It's very important that the nation has a very strong leader who unifies the nation, not divides. Divisive leaders create hate, evil, racism, and bigotry. We have a United Nations. If they want to live up to the name United Nations, why don't they issue a directive to all member nations, there are about 190 some, that to be a member in good standing, you will not permit the spread of hate in your nation towards any group of people. If you do, you'll be expelled and boycotted economically and politically by all other nations. Why don't they do it? Leaders have to take upon themselves the role of unifying the people, not dividing them. As long as we have leaders who are divisive, humanity will continue to destroy itself.
I have children that range between 6 to 16. With giving them hope, when you're giving them insight of what we're dealing with today, how do you continue to build it? How do you ask them to get involved?
The children?
Yes, children.
Well, I speak mostly to students all over the country. You teach them not to accept, not to tolerate any kind of racist or bigoted remarks. Tell them don't insult people. If that's how you're going to behave, don't talk to me.
So I've been to a Holocaust presentation for about 30 years. I remember seeing a tattoo. What was was there any order, like what, I believe their numbers, was there any indication of what that number meant, or was it just a random number?
Everyone who went through Auschwitz-Birkenau had that number tattooed on his or her wrist. However, when I arrived late summer 1944, even though the Nazis knew they were losing the war, they tried to kill as many people as possible. So the influx at that particular time was so great, they were unable to tattoo a number on everyone. I didn't have one. However, when I came to the concentration camp at Calvary, we had a pajama outfit and a white stripe number on it. My number was 96038. So if you play bingo, those are good numbers.
This is so meaningful for all of us, and we certainly appreciate your strength and continuing to be active even in your senior years. We're standing here in the Sparks Armory, and Sparks was a Colorado Guard officer.
I knew him very well.
Could you speak a little bit to that, please?
He and I spoke to many students in many schools together, Colonel Sparks and I. But you mentioned my age. I'm only going to be 91 in a couple of weeks. And because you're so respectful and nice, I'll give you a tip how to reach a ripe old age. Mine or older. Always be a lady or a gentleman. Because if you are a lady or a gentleman, and the day comes you find yourself at the checkout counter of life, and you are a lady or a gentleman and you want to live longer, you let others go ahead of you.
Sir, the Nazi officer you spoke of that had demonstrated some humanity towards you, which was so obviously important as you described it. Did you ever have any sort of reconnection, or did you ever learn anything?
I indicated I was hospitalized for about 3 months. When I came out, I got a job with the United Nations who ran the displaced persons camp. And the lady in charge was an American woman, Mary Helen Cattell. I was a messenger. I delivered the mail to the people in camp, notes and so on. And I told her about him, and we were unable to find him. Had I been successful, I wouldn't hesitate for 1 second to testify in a very positive way on his behalf.
My parents are both survivors, and I grew up in a home where, to some degree or another, it was very hard for them not to be filled with a tremendous amount of hate towards the perpetrator. And you don't sound that way. So my question to you is, how have you dealt with that feeling and either overcame it or never felt it?
To me, hate is a waste of energy. I rather utilize my energy towards doing something positive. And that's what kept me going that way. I believe, however, those who commit atrocities against any group of people should be brought to justice and dealt with accordingly.
Last account I read about lockout liberation, I remember hearing about the risk of going off on a forced march. So it's the entire camp emptied and put on that forced march away from lockdown, or was some left behind?
Many were left behind. They just took about 7,000 of us out. And there were many Russian POWs in our group on the death march as well. But they didn't take off. I don't know how they determined.
Why did they switch off like that? The American Army is closing in on all sides. Why did they push on that march to get you away from camp?
They just took those who were still physically able to march. They felt they'll be the witnesses against them, and they want to get rid of them. When the Third Army entered Dachau, they found many, many dead people. Eisenhower called in the local population and showed them what they did there and made them bury the dead.
Awesome. Sir, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As I said when we started, you gave us all a gift this holiday season, and something that we can carry for the rest of our lives, to really understand your message and hopefully take it on, so people never forget, so people continue to grow, continue to demonstrate mutual respect, one by one, and hopefully continue to make a better world. So, thank you.
Sir, thank you again. On behalf of the Colorado National Guard, we want to give you a few gifts. You can carry this with pride, a tote bag from our recruiting community. And this is one of our special chaplain coins that we give out. Has Isaiah 41:10 on it. It says, "Fear not, do not be dismayed. I will uphold you by my right hand." We are just very honored that you're here, both Chaplain Friedman and myself. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And this.
It's in the bag.
Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude this ceremony, we're going to move out into the foyer area and just do a very short lighting of the Advent candles and the menorah. So we ask that you would join us, and there'll be some light refreshments following that. So join us.
I needed to get out.